what would you say our recent experience with the COVID pandemic, how would you say that
Yes,
that has affected our perception on death and dying?
I'm glad you asked it. I saw the question. I'm happy you got to it because I also know the person who asked it. And I really want to answer it for them.
Okay.
So I had a whole chapter on this, which I didn't include in the presentation because it was just too much, right? We couldn't even finish in an hour. So I had a whole chapter in my thesis. So those who want to download it, they'll see it about the COVID experience. And so how this death denying culture that we're in, even as Orthodox Christians, especially as Orthodox Christians, how that has affected our ability to respond to pandemics, to respond to calamities. And the gist of what I said, and you can all read it, is that, and some people will disagree, is that I found, unfortunately, that the Orthodox as a whole, is a general criticism, right, from all levels, top to bottom. I personally think that we failed horribly. And what do I mean by that? Is that we are also driven by the fear of physical death, of biological death, right? That it drove us into like the extremes. And so I wrote in my thesis that you had people, not everybody, of course, is generalization. You had people polarizing either on the extreme within the church, the extreme left or the extreme right. And ironically, you know how we say like the extremes are in a circle are always closer to each other, right? So you had on one side, let's say the extreme left. I don't like to use these kind of political terms, but right. But you had people lock down everything, wear the masks, don't kiss any icons, don't take communion. All this stuff. It's like fear, fear, fear. Right? We're gonna die. Right? So stay home, stay home, stay home. So you have that. I want to make sure I stay alive. There's that. And then you have the other side. Um, no, go to church, do everything normal because nothing bad will ever happen to you. Like you can't catch COVID in a church. You can't get sick. You know what I mean, right? So it was the other extreme. And why do I call that an extreme as well? Because of course you can get sick, right? And we know from the history of pandemics in the church that Christians, like I talked about the plague of Saint Cyprian, right? Where pagans would run for the hills and leave their loved ones to die in the streets, and Christians would stay behind to minister to them. And what happened to those Christians? They died, and they knew they were going to die, but they didn't with they didn't think there'd be a protective bubble around them. They said, "No, this is I'm here to help, and if I die, I die." And so, both extremes, people who wanted to, tell people this almost this prosperity gospel, like if you come into the church, there's a magical bubble and you will not get COVID, right? Or on the other side, don't go to the church because you'll get COVID. Both of them betray an inherent fear of death. And nobody was in the center saying, you know what? The churches should be open. And yeah, I might get sick and die, but it's the pearl of great price. And that's the risk I take because not receiving communion and not receiving Christ is worse than death. And so I take that. But if you say that in our modern society, they'll think you're crazy, right? You're a danger to public health, right? So what I'm saying is that both sides, in my opinion, were wrong because they were both betraying this fear of death. And we were creating novel theologies on one side, or we were pandering to fear on the other side, instead of just being balanced and prayerful. So that's my thoughts on that.